What if I told you the toughest shelters ever built by human hands weren't made of stone, wood, or steel, but of living earth, cut from the ground like flesh from a giant? And what if those shelters kept people alive through winters so violent that even modern survivalists would call them unlivable? Today, we step inside the forgotten engineering of the North Atlantic Vikings, the people who learned to build houses so stormproof, so insulated, and so perfectly adapted to subarctic hell that many still stand after 1,000 years. But there is a secret behind these dwellings, a secret archaeologists are only now beginning to understand. They weren't just houses, they were machines built to survive an apocalypse that hadn't even happened yet. When the first Norse settlers stepped onto Icelandic soil around AD 870, they entered a world no saga had ever prepared them for. Winds didn't simply blow here, they screamed, slashing across the open landscape with a force that could peel skin. Volcanic ash drifted through the air like a permanent storm, coating clothing, tools, and lungs. And winter swallowed daylight whole. Days collapsed into a kind of dim twilight where even fire felt small. But the cruelest surprise came from what wasn't there. No forests, no timber stands, no towering trunks to carve into beams, walls, or rafters, the very materials that defined the Viking architectural soul. For a people raised on great wooden halls, arriving in Iceland was like dropping modern builders onto the surface of the moon and asking them to construct a skyscraper. Nothing behaved the way they expected. Nothing obeyed the rules they knew. Yet the Vikings did not turn back. They would not let the land break them. So they watched the wind, they studied the ground, and slowly, piece by piece, they adapted. Not through force, but through a rare kind of humility. They let the land teach them how to survive. What the settlers eventually began to notice was so simple, so quiet, that it almost felt impossible they had overlooked it. The ground beneath their feet wasn't just soil, it wasn't mud, it was alive. A dense weave of roots, packed layers of organic matter, moisture locked between centuries of growth and decay. Icelandic turf was a natural composite built slowly by cold winds. It flexed, it breathed, it held warmth like a living skin. Archaeologists studying these layers today discovered something astonishing. In certain conditions, these ancient earthen walls can insulate as well as modern fiberglass. But a miracle material is useless without mastery. Turf houses were not crude huts thrown together in desperation. They were deliberate, methodical, almost surgical works of engineering. Builders began by carving the earth with long-handled spades. Each slice lifted from the ground became a block, thick, dense, and heavy, shaped into what the Norse called torf bricks. And look at how they stacked them, not randomly. They were arranged in interlocking patterns, often a herringbone weave. Each angle was chosen to distribute weight and prevent collapse. Layer after layer, the walls grew thicker. Some reached 6 feet across, massive fortifications of living earth. But beneath every turf wall, hidden from sight, lies the true genius of this design, the spine. A stone foundation, so deliberate and carefully arranged that archaeologists call it the skeleton of the house. Without this stone base, moisture from the ground would creep upward via capillary action, turning the walls into sludge. The stones acted as a capillary break, a passive drainage system engineered centuries before anyone used that term. Only after these walls stood firm did the builders introduce wood. But Iceland had no forests to cut, so settlers turned to one of the strangest supply chains in human history, the Arctic driftwood system. Huge logs, torn from Siberian and North American coasts, rode ocean currents for thousands of miles before washing up on Iceland's shores. Each log was precious treasure, reserved only for the skeleton of the home. Everything else, built from earth. To survive the knife-sharp winds, the Vikings did something bold. They built downward. Instead of rising above the land, their homes sank into it, half submerged like ancient creatures burrowing for warmth. This wasn't an aesthetic choice, it was aerodynamics. Winds that could peel roofs off wooden halls simply glided over these mounds. The earth itself became a shield. We are peeling back the layers of history, but there is a darker layer yet to come. If you're enjoying this deep dive into ancient engineering, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss what we uncover next. Inside these dark, insulated rooms, the hearth was the center of life, the single, unwavering pulse that kept an entire household alive. In a land where the cold outside could crack bone, the warmth inside these walls felt like being reborn. Here, life compressed into a single glowing center. But the hearth brought more than comfort. It brought a second, quieter threat. The very design that trapped heat, trapped smoke as well. Turf houses excelled at holding warmth, but during the worst winter storms, opening a roof vent was an act of risk. A single gust could snuff out the fire or let in lethal snowdrifts. So families kept the vents closed. Hours turned into days, days into months, and over time, the air inside these homes thickened, not just with smoke, but with a low, constant haze. Archaeologists today see the proof. Interior beams from excavated longhouses are soaked in soot, darkened by years of trapped smoke. But the most haunting evidence lies in the people themselves. Skeletal remains from Viking Age Icelanders show markers that point to chronic respiratory stress, a physical signature of generations living in homes that warmed them and suffocated them in the same breath. It was a brutal trade-off. Freeze to death minutes outside, or slowly poison your lungs inside. Survival always comes with a price. This engineering didn't just change their health, it changed their society. In Scandinavia, wealthy jarls announced their status through architecture. Towering wooden halls, carved beams, bright painted gables. Their power was visible from miles away. But in Iceland, that system collapsed. Here, everyone lived beneath turf. Chieftains, farmers, warriors, all sheltered under the same low, grass-covered mounds. From the outside, the storm did not care who you were. The wind made no room for pride. Under turf roofs, everyone looked equal. Some historians argue this quiet architectural shift leveled Icelandic society more than any law code ever could. A democracy of necessity, built not by philosophy, but by climate. And yet, for all we've uncovered, the true brilliance of turf houses lies in one final chilling realization. They were not built for the climate the Vikings lived in. They were built for the climate that was coming. By the late 1100s, the North Atlantic was drifting toward what we now call the Little Ice Age, a long, grinding period of colder winters and violent storms. Yet centuries before the cold fully arrived, Icelandic settlers were constructing homes that seemed prophetic. Deeply insulated, storm-resistant, half buried in the earth like animals bracing for a harder world. How did they know? Were they guided by ancestral memory? Or was it simply the oldest instinct our species possesses, the ability to survive by preparing for the worst? Whatever the reason, one truth endures. These were not just houses. They were proto-Earth ships, time capsules engineered to outlast a future no one had witnessed yet. And astonishingly, they did. When the world changes, whether by fire, ice, or time, it is always the people who listen to the land who last the longest. If you want to uncover more lost survival technologies of the ancient world, click here to watch our video on the underground cities of Cappadocia. And don't forget to subscribe. The past is not dead, it's only buried.